Hello, so signals are very important if you want to have a smooth running game. Most of the time, a lot of people don't set them up correctly, and think about it. Signals are basically nodes talking to each other. This process happens all throughout the game, so you can kind of see that if it isn't set up correctly, that it could get pretty messy fast. Like, do you want to inform the apple tree that it's been picked and to restart the growing process? Then use signals. Or maybe you want to inform the arrow that it's been shot, or maybe the enemy that it's been hit. Now, these are all really basic examples of signals, and they can get so much more complex. And in this video, I want to explain how signals work and how to best use them as we go through 3 different in-game examples. In example 1, we'll quickly cover the basics and how to use different types of signals. Then in example 2, we'll create a world with different plates that send signals to the background to change the color to match the color of that plate. And in example 3, we'll go over how variables work with signals and how you can pass variables through signals as we create this enemy attack and the updating player health bar. But quickly before we get started, if you could please subscribe and leave a like on this video so more aspiring game developers can also learn to make their own Godot games as well, then it would mean the absolute world to me. Okay, so this is going to be example 1 world inside of our project. We have example 2 world and example 3 world. So if you want to download this exact file for all these different example worlds with the existing code, then that's going to be linked below so you can follow alongside as we go through and we create changes and make changes to connect signals to different things to learn all about how signals work. So this project will be linked completely for free in the description below, so you can go and download it and follow alongside with me. Okay, so in example 1, we're going to go over 2 of the most basic signals, either signals from an existing node or signals that we create in our own script. So signals from an existing node are very, very simple. If we go to our world and we click on the add node and we add a timer node, and we can also go and we can add a button node, right? And we're going to connect both of these for existing nodes signals, but I want to go over one thing. So button, if we go up here to node and we click on node and we see the signals, you're going to see all of these different signals that the button has. But if we go to the timer, you're going to see that it has different signals. Every single node in the entire game is going to have different signals from each other. Like the sprite 2D is going to have its own signals, and the node 2D is going to have its own signals, right? So they're all going to have their own signals, and these are events that happen. So for example, we have a button, and an event that could happen with the button is that the button is pressed. If the button's pressed, then we're going to emit a signal, and it's going to send that signal to whatever node we want it to send to. So if we raise our button here, make it a little bigger so we can actually click it, we can go to our button and we can click on this press signal, we can double click it, and it's going to pop up a connect a signal to a method. We're going to connect this signal, and it's going to create a function method inside of our script, and that is going to be our sprite 2D script. So if we click connect, you're going to see that is going to create a function inside of our script. Basically, whenever we click the button, because that's the event, it's going to send this signal and it's going to run this function. When we click the button, what function are we going to want to run? Well, we're going to run the toggle function, right? So it's going to run our button press function, then we'll call the toggle function, and it will toggle our node spinning on and off. So if we save that, we go and we click play, you're going to see that it's spinning. If we click the button, it's not spinning. If we click it again, it is spinning. If we click it, it's not spinning. But if we go over here to the button and we right click, this is how you disconnect the method, and we disconnect it, and then we go and play, well, you're going to see that the button no longer works because the signal is no longer connected, right? So that's how we know this signal is working. So if we go to the button and we click pressed and we connect it back to sprite 2D, as long as it has the same receiver method down here, then it's going to match up perfectly with it, right? And it's right here, it shows that it's connected to this. But if we go to the timer, you're going to see it's going to have different nodes. And just real quick, we can create a timeout node. We can send it to the sprite, and this is the same thing. An event happens, the timer hits the end of its timer, and it's going to call this function, right? So maybe we can say something like self.visible is going to equal to the opposite of self.visible every single time that the timer goes off. So if we go to our timer and we go to inspector and we make the wait time maybe 0.2 and we click it to auto start, well, you're going to see that if we play the world, it's going to be flashing because that's the signal that the timer is calling. And if we pause it, it's still going to pause, and it's still going to move, and it's still going to flash, right? Based on how the signals are. And that's going to get pretty annoying pretty quick. So we're going to go and we're going to go to the timer. We're going to go to the node. We're going to disconnect the method. We're going to go to the button. We're going to disconnect the method as well. And then we're going to remove both of these nodes because we're no longer going to use them. And now we're going to go over creating a custom signal, right? So creating a custom signal inside of a script. So to do that, we're going to go to the example 1 world up here. We're going to create a script on this example world. And in this world, the only reason we're going to create a new script is so we can create a signal, right? So to create a custom signal, all we're going to do is we're going to type in signal. It's like variable. So if you want to create a variable, right? If you want to create a variable, you're going to say var whatever your variable name is going to be. So DevWorm, right? Bar DevWorm is equal to 1, right? Or bar DevWorm is equal to subscribe, whatever it may be equal to, right? So that's how you create a variable. If you want to create a signal, you're just going to type out signal, and you're going to put the name of the signal here. So the name of our signal, we can go for something like just toggle icon spin, right? So toggle icon spin. And then basically, what are we going to want to have to happen in our process function? We can kind of check for something like if a button is pressed. We can say if input dot is action just pressed UI accept, and then all we can do is emit signal. But how are we going to connect this signal to what we want it to be connected to? Well, to do that, if you go to the node, you're going to see that it's going to have created a brand new signal. These were the existing signals on the node already, but now we have a new signal that is inside of the script, right? So this is a example1 world.gd signal. That means it's a custom signal that we created. If we double click it, it's going to connect to whatever we want to the exact same way that we connected the other one from an existing signal. So if we click on Sprite 2D, we click connect, and we can just go here and we can make the event to toggle. We click play, and you're going to see that if we click the enter button, it's going to call it based on the signal that is being emitted, right? So that is how you are going to do custom signals and existing signals. Okay, so now that we're done with example 1, we're going to move to example 2. And in example 2, we're going to have a script that's going to have different area 2Ds, which are going to be plates. And if we walk on top, it's going to send a signal to that script. That's then going to send a signal to the main script, which is going to go and send a signal to the background, which is going to change the background color based on whatever color that the plate is equal to, right? So this is going to actually, it looks complicated, but it's actually going to be very, very easy. So if we hit area 2D and we make an area 2D, we can name this area 2D plate 1, right? So this will be plate 1, and plate 1 is going to consist of a color rect. And this color rect is going to be, we'll just move it right here. And this color rect, the color on this color rect is going to be equal to whatever the background of color rect is equal to. So we can just copy that color. We can come back and we can paste it here. And you can see that it's going to be the exact same color because this one's just going to set the color to this, right? It's going to set it back to default. Then we can add a collision shape 2D. And this collision shape 2D, we want to be equal to a rectangle. That I did not mean to make that a child of color rect. I meant that to make that a child of the plate 1. So it accidentally put a child on the wrong node. But if we make it, you know, somewhat even, well, you're going to see that that's going to be our plate. And I'll go over exactly what it's going to do here in just a second. But if we go and we add another area 2D, we can name this area 2D our plate 2 because that's what it's going to be. So plate 2. And just like for the last one, we can add a color rect. And this color rect is going to be equal to, I guess we can go with pink, right? So it doesn't really matter. Any color will work for this example. So we'll have pink. And then we'll go to our plate 2D and we'll say collision shape 2D. And we want this to be equal to a square. And then we can move this over here to our color rect. And we can line it up somewhat decent, right? Somewhere where it makes sense. And basically, we're going to go into, we're going to minimize all this for now. And we're going to see that plate 1 is going to go into these signals, which remember, these are existing signals. So we don't actually have a script. So we want to go to example 2 world. We want to create an example 2 world script. And that's going to create a new script. And then our plates, you're going to see that we have body entered existing node signals. And from plate 1, we'll say body entered, and we'll send this to the world. And plate 2 will send a body entered signal as well. And body entered, remember, these are events that happen. So if a body enters, basically anything that has like a character body 2D or something like that enters the area, well, it's going to call this signal. And in this signal, it's going to give us a variable. As you can see, last time we haven't got a variable. Now we have a variable. So this is going to basically be the body. This is going to be whatever body that walks into the area. And with this body, well, we can kind of print it out. So let's say we walk into the area on plate 1. Well, if we say print body, you're going to see what this is going to print. This is going to print whatever walks into the area. So up here, you're going to see it's going to print what it is. It's a character body. And that's an example 2 player. That's the name of the node. So we know exactly what enters it. And if we go to our player, you're going to see that we have a function player. So if we go back to plate 1, if we go back to example 2 script, we can say if body, because this is now a variable that is basically a variable that is equal to the path to our player. We can say if body, and we can check if this body has a method, and if this body has method player, we know for a fact that it is the player, right? So if body.has method is player, then we're going to want to change the color. So first we're going to want to have a variable for color, and this color is going to be equal to that of plate 1. So var color is going to be equal to plate1.colorrect.color, right? So now we're going to get the color hex code. And actually I want to go the other way because we don't really have to make sure that's the player. I mean, we could, it doesn't really matter. We can do this as well. And then we're going to have to go up here to the top, and we're going to create a new node. And this node up here is going to just be a variable. And this variable is going to be background. I said create new node. I meant create a new variable. And this is going to be an onReady variable because we're going to be getting a item from our scene tree. And we're going to say onReady var. And this will be the background that we're going to be changing the color of. Background is going to equal to land.colorrect, and we're going to want to change this. So land.colorrect, we can come down here. You can see that if we enter, basically this is going to get the land. This is going to get the background, so we can end up changing the color of it down here in this function. But you can see, so if we enter the area, if the body that enters, right, because we're going to get the body from the signal, if that body has the method player, which our player does, so basically the only thing that can enter, or the only thing that can go past this if function is the player. So if the body is equal to the player, then we'll go in here and we'll set the variable color to equal the color of plate 1, and then we'll change the background, which is the variable we just made, so the background color will now equal the color that we want it to equal, just like this. And we can basically copy this and put this down here because these are going to be almost the exact same too, except we want to change the link here to be plate 2 color, so it's going to be pink, right? So the background.color is going to equal pink. And if we play, you're going to see that we can either walk on pink, it's going to change the background, or we can walk on blue, it's going to change the background based on whatever we walk on top of. And I'm going to kind of explain this here one more time, and you can see the player goes over. That is a quick fix, just like this. But yeah, so quickly, basically how this is working, right? We have plate 1, and plate 1 has an event. If a body enters, the character body 2D is a body. So if that enters, well, it's going to call this signal. If the body that enters the area has method player, which our player does, then it's going to set the color variable, a local color variable, to equal that of plate 1 colorrect. And if the plate 1 colorrect equals .color, then we're going to change the background.color equals to whatever color we just set, which is whatever color that the plate that we stepped on is equal to, right? So I'm going to time lapse, and I'm going to create one more plate just real fast so we can go over and have 3, so it looks a little bit better and it looks a little more complex, even though it's going to be the exact same code, right? So I'll be right back. Okay, so now that we have a third plate, if we go click play, you can kind of see that we're going to have 3 different plates, and all of them are going to work based on whatever color they have because of the signals that are being passed through. As you saw, we created and we went over, but that is how you're going to create signals in an in-game example, in an in-game environment. That's kind of how signals can work. But in example 3, I want to go over how enemies are going to attack the player, because if we go to example 3 now and we click play, you can kind of see that we have an enemy that follows the player, but the enemy does not attack the player, and the player actually has health that is never taken away. Okay, so not sure if I mentioned it yet, but what's unique about example 3 is going to be that we're going to pass a variable through a signal. And how I want to go over this is I want to first enter into the enemy scene, right? If we go to the enemy scene, we can kind of see that we just have a sprite and a collision shape and a script that is going to cause it to follow the player. A very, very, very basic script. But I want to go over how to create a little, so first of all, we're going to need it to attack the player, and we're going to need to detect if that player is in the enemy's attack zone. So we can say something like damage detection, and damage detection is going to consist of just a collision shape 2D, and this collision shape, not sure exactly where it's at. Oh, we haven't created it yet, but it's going to be a circle, and it's going to be a little bit bigger than the collision, just like this. And you're going to see that we have signals, and the signal that we're going to want is a body entered. So we're going to check just like in the last one, we're going to check what body has entered the signal. So if the body that has entered the signal has the method of player, right? Well, we're going to want to say whatever the variable that we want to pass through. So we're going to emit the signal, right? Which we haven't created yet, but we'll call this signal something like damage to player. And so up here, if we have damage to player, I want to go how are we going to pass a variable through that signal that we just created, right? So signal, let's create the actual signal first. So damage to player, just like that. So we have emit signal, but we want to pass some damage. We want to pass some signal through, so we know what signal we're going to have, because we're going to need some type of signal to pass through that is going to tell the player how much damage the enemy is trying to deal. So if we go up here and we create a variable, and we're going to name this variable damage, we can set this to equal to whatever we want. So 20, right? So let's say, I guess an in-game example would be if you have the enemy and it's attacking, and you want it to do 10 damage on this enemy, or you want it to do 20 damage on the player. Then down here you can say if body.has method slime damage 20, right? Or damage 10. So it does different damage to different items in the game. But emit signal damage to player, and then how we will pass that damage variable through to our player script is very, very easy. All we have to do is a comma, and we can just type that variable out just like this, just like damage, just like that, right? So now it's going to pass that variable 20 through to whatever this signal goes to. So just like in the last one, the way that we can do this is we can go to our world, we can say enemy, we can say the node signal and damage to player. You can see it creates a custom signal, and we can connect this to the player script. Now in the player script, we're going to have to go over here and we're going to have to say damage, because so we have that variable. So now that variable is going to pass through, and when it passes through, it's going to be equal to damage, right? So it's going to keep the same name, because we're going to keep it the same name, but we can rename this to absolutely anything, right? So we can rename this to well, okay, just to make it easy, we'll say damage amount, just so you know that we can rename it to anything. It's going to be a different variable name. So damage amount. Now inside of this function, we're going to say take damage, and then we're going to pass that damage variable through to a new function, and this function is going to be created because we don't have it yet, so we're going to get an error. So we can say take damage, and it's going to bring in damage amount, and inside of this function we're going to want to basically change our health. So we want our health to minus equal whatever damage amount is, and then we're going to want to check if the player is dead or not. So we're going to say if health, and I'll go over this here in just a second how it works, but if health is less than or equal to 0, then we're going to want to set health to make sure it's equal to 0, so we're not under 0, because you don't want to be under. And then we're going to set just to keep it simple, this is where you would call your death function, but we don't really have a death function, so we'll just set physics process to false, so we stop moving. And then we'll emit a signal, which is going to be to update the player's health, which is going to be inside of a UI, right? So we'll go over this here in just a second, but for now I want to go up to the top, create a signal. This is going to be the signal to update our UI, which we'll go and, like I said, make in just a minute, but we'll say signal update player health, right? So that will be update our player health UI, and we can say emit signal update player health, and then we want to pass through health, just like this, right? So we're going to emit the signal update player health, and we're going to pass through health, so it's going to be kind of the same thing. But let me explain how this works just real quick. If we go to our we go to our enemy, if a body enters the detection area, well, it's going to set the damage variable to whatever we want it to, so we'll set it to 20, and then we're going to emit the signal damage to player. That signal is connected to our player, right? So it's connected to this function here, so it's going to call this function, and we're going to bring in that damage amount, and damage amount is going to be equal to the damage from the enemy scene is going to be equal to damage amount, and then we're going to call another function, take damage, so we can tell our player to take damage, and then that's going to be, remember, this is going to be our damage amount. We're going to go into this take damage function, we're going to pass through that variable again, and we're going to say health is minus equal whatever damage amount is. And then we're going to say if health is less than 0, this is where you would call your, so you'll say health is going to be equal to 0 just to make sure you don't have any bugs and to make sure it is equal to 0. And then here is where you would call death function. So this is where you would do all your death stuff after player death, and then we'll emit signal to update the player's health in the UI. And you're going to want to be emitting this throughout the game, so it's always updating. So we'll put that into the physics process as well, and we'll go over how to create UI in just a second. But if we click play, you're going to see, well, if we click play on the world, you're going to see that our player freezes. But now we're going to go through and we're going to create more signals for player UI. See, look, we can no longer move because we hit the player 4 times. But now we're going to go through and we're going to create signals for the UI, so we can have updating UI, and that's going to again be done with all signals. Okay, so to create the UI, now we'll go to our node 2D and we're going to add a control node, and this control node can just be equal to UI for now. And inside of here, we're going to want to add a progress bar, and this progress bar is going to be our player's health bar. So we can say something like the player health bar, just like that. And in the UI, we're going to want to create a new script, and this is going to be ui.gd for now. And inside of this, we're going to want to have a onReady var, and this onReady var is just going to be for our health bar. So we can say onReady var and player, our onReady var health bar, just like this, is going to be equal to that of the player health bar. And we can save the scene, and we can go to our health bar real quick, and we can create it to actually look halfway decent. So we can say something like, whoops, something like that. That's our health bar. We can come down here to visibility, and we can make it into some sort of green, which I guess that's gonna work nice, right? So that's our health bar there. And then in our health bar, we can go to our player here, and remember we created that signal in the last just a minute ago. We'll say update player health bar. We can send this signal to our UI script, we can connect it, and we can say, we can pass through that health variable, right? And then down here we can basically say that health bar dot value is going to be equal to health. So we can print health just so we can see that it passes the correct variable through. And then we can say something like player, or I don't know. I was trying to copy the name we had over here, which is not the right thing to do, right? So you got to get the variable name that we created. So health bar dot text or dot value is equal to that of whatever health is equal to, right? So if we are to play, everything should technically be working. You can see up in the top it says 100, now it says 80, now it says 60, and every time we get hit it's going to go down, boom, and it's going to go down even again. And now we can't move because the health is equal to 0, but you can see it doesn't go under 0, which is exactly what we want. So that is going to be how you create a player with an enemy with an updating health bar, just like that. And I hope this tutorial was able to help you out, and if it was, then please drop a like on this video so YouTube knows that this is a helpful tutorial that other aspiring game developers will get some good out of. And if there was anything that you needed to let me know, then please let me know in the comments. Anything that you need in Godot, let me know in the comments as well. But I hope this was able to provide some type of value about signals to your Godot journey and make it a little bit easier than it would have been without this video. But until next time, I hope to see you again, and stay safe. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Bye bye.